Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Who can tell me what the 7 topics of Sambandha are without looking at your book?
Krishna.
Yes. Krishna, that's one. And?
His energies.
His energies, that's the second one. We're doing them in order, all right. Okay, the next, without looking in the book? Rasa, yes. Then? You and he and I, we are. Starts with a J, Jiva, right? Jiva. And then within the category of Jiva, there are 2 specific categories, which are? And? Nityabhara, Nityamukta. Nityamukta. And the last one? The last of the 7 of topics of Sambandha? No. Lord Chaitanya used it to bring all of the other mats together, all of the other sampradayas together. Each of them had an incomplete philosophy. There was Dvaita, Achintya Bheda Bheda. Yes. Okay. So those are the 7 topics of Sambandha. I only have 6 fingers up. Those are the 7 topics of Sambandha. So the 7 topics of Sambandha are part of the 10 of the Dasamul Tattva. So, what's before Sambandha? There was one item before Sambandha. Praman, which is?
Evidence.
Evidence. Right, and our evidence?
Lord Chaitanya teachings.
And in general, Shastra. Right. So we have, that's the Praman, then the Prameya. So within Prameya we had the 7 topics of Sambandha. And then, so there's 2 more. We have the Praman, we have 7 topics of Sambandha, that's 8. So what are 9 and 10? Yes, good. Okay, so yesterday we talked about Krishna. We started talking about Krishna's energies, the 2nd topic of Sambandha, and that's where we will continue. Lord Krishna naturally has 3 energetic transformations, and these are known as the spiritual potency, the living entity potency, and the illusory potency. So internal, marginal, and external. Krishna has that was Madhya Lila 21:11. As in 20, pause, 111. Next, Madhya Lila 20:252. Krishna has unlimited potencies, out of which 3 are chief: willpower, the power of knowledge, and the creative energy. Who wants extra credit? Who knows the terms for these 3? Willpower, power of knowledge, and creative energy. There's 3 different Shaktis. Yeah, so are you looking at the footnote on the next page?
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
Nice. You still get the extra credit because you were looking ahead. Then, same chapter, text 158 through 160. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in His original form is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Satchidananda. The spiritual potency in these three portions assumes three different forms. The three portions of the spiritual potency are called Hladini, Sandhini, and Samvit. We accept knowledge of these as full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead also appears in three phases: internal, marginal, and external. These are all engaged in His devotional service in love. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. This means that Krishna has one personal energy called Svarup Shakti, or Para Shakti. This Para Shakti has three vibhavas, objective components, three prabhavas, influences, and three anubhavas, emotional components, by Krishna's will. Footnote 46, Srimad Bhagavatam 4:9-16. My dear Lord, in your impersonal manifestation of Brahman, there are always two opposing elements, knowledge and ignorance. Your multi-energies are continually manifest, but the impersonal Brahman, which is undivided, original, changeless, unlimited, and blissful, is the cause of the material manifestation. Because you are the same impersonal Brahman, I offer my respectful obeisances to you. The three vibhavas are the Chit Shakti, Jiva Shakti, and Maya Shakti. Footnote 47. Madhya Lila, 6th chapter, 160. The spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead also appears in three phases: internal, Chit Shakti; marginal, Jiva Shakti; and the external, Maya Shakti. These are all engaged in His devotional service in love. The three anubhavas are Sandhini, Hladini, and Samvit. Footnote 49. Hladini is the aspect of bliss, Sandhini of eternal existence, and Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. And that's in Caitanya Siksamrita Adi Lila 4:62 and Madhya 8:155. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. By the influence of the Icha Shakti, the supreme will, the Chit Shakti manifests Goloka, Vaikuntha, and other places of the Lord's pastimes. Krishna's names, the Lord's various two-handed or four-handed or six-handed forms, the pastimes with His associates in Goloka, Vrindavan, and Vaikuntha, and the spiritual qualities such as mercy, forgiveness, and generosity. So these terms are in bold because these are all things that are non-different from Krishna. Name, form, quality, pastimes. By the influence of the Jnana Shakti, the Chit Shakti produces various perceptions, Aishvarya, Madhurya, and the beauty of the spiritual world. Krishna alone possesses the Icha Shakti. The controller of the Jnana Shakti is Vasudev, and the controller of the Kriya Shakti is Baladev, or Sankarsana. By the influence of the Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti, upon the Jiva Shakti, the eternal associates, Devatas, men, demons, and Rakshasas appear. By the influence of the Kriya Shakti, the Lord's Anubhavas become active. Within the Chit Shakti, the Sandhini, Samvit, and Hladini Shaktis combine to produce the distinctive ecstasies of prema. Krishna's energies are unlimited and endless, and thus all the activities of the Chit Shakti are eternal, without beginning or end. Then Madhya Lila 20-57. Although there is no question of creation as far as the spiritual world is concerned, the spiritual world is nonetheless manifest by the supreme will of Sankarshana, Kriya Shakti. The spiritual world is the abode of the pastimes of the eternal spiritual energy. Another name of the shadow energy is material nature. And then this is Madhya Lila 20, 259 to 261. By the agency of the material energy, this same Lord Sankarshana creates all the universes. The dull material energy, known in modern language as nature, is not the cause of material nature. Without the Supreme Personality of Godhead's energy, dull matter cannot create the cosmic manifestation. Its power does not arise from the material energy itself, but is endowed by Sankarshan. Dull matter alone cannot create anything. The material energy produces the creation by the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iron itself has no power to burn, but when the iron is placed in fire, it is empowered to burn. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur concludes, the Kriya Shakti is also called Sankarshana Shakti. The transitory transformation of Maya Shakti through the Kriya Shakti is the material world. The Jiva Shakti will be more clearly delineated in the next part of this book. Are there any questions on Krishna's energy? It's a lot, right?
Too many.
Too many questions. It was all clear to Pandavji. I mean, in one sense, it's all clearly described. There are a lot of terms that many of us don't use a lot. But if there are any practical questions, I can give it a shot. Otherwise, we can move to rasa. Rasa. Pandava likes the idea of moving to rasa. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Rasa. This is the third part
Here
of Sambandha.
mentioned three Shakti: willpower, knowledge, power of knowledge, and creative energy. What is different between Hladini, Samvit, and Sandhini? It is different energies or the same? Because we discussed with you, we cannot match it together. But same energy or
Because of the power of Vishesh. Sometimes one.
So Samvit's cognizance, Hladini's bliss, and Sandhini's eternity.
how,
It's like Sambandha Vidya and Prayojan.
how they are working. If some example, Krishna's pastimes. Can you give some example? How it works, how practical.
You can,
Well, you can be
Because-
Sandhini.
Mhm.
Okay, go.
Because technically we can read, but how it's what to say, absorb, how they work, and how they practical.
I can take theoretically something. First, you need to have the place, the field of activity. For example, the spiritual world, this is manifested by Sankarsana, although it is eternal, but still it is
What is Shakti?
Sandhini,
Some
existence, Sat,
okay.
or Sambandha Gyan. And then you have to operate the field. These are the pastimes. To operate the field, you need knowledge, Samvit.
Mhm.
And then by operating the field with knowledge, then you acquire bliss and this prayer. I hope everything is clear.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thankfully for us, once we attain said realm, we don't see it in these terms, we just experience it. Which is why rasa is more powerful than tattva, but we need the tattva to understand why such things can't be properly experienced here. Right, so we deal with the three modes of material nature, and there they have these three energies that are taking care of these things.
I think we need tattva, mainly, this is the point Rupa Goswami makes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, mainly to discriminate between material and spiritual rasa. That's why we need it.
Otherwise we confuse the substance and the shadow. We read about it and we're attracted, but if we don't know the difference between the matter and the spirit, then yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, once this is established, then you can just experience rasa. But it's not so easy to distinguish between material and spiritual. Therefore, this is all this struggle. Many people try to establish that Mishra Bhakti is the same as Kevala Bhakti. This is a ongoing battle, struggle, in all spiritual circles, including ours. And for this you require knowledge. Before you experience the rasa, you have to know what is the goal. Therefore, Rupa Goswami makes so much endeavor to explain Anya Vilashta Shunyam Gyan Karmani, very clearly what is the goal of our practice, what is pure bhakti. And everything else is Mishra Bhakti.
Good.
What means personal energy called Swarupa Shakti? It means Swarupa Shakti.
The energy of the world, but it functions in different
Swarupa Shakti means Lord, His energy.
Yeah. Yoga Maya.
So the Lord has one spiritual energy, and within this one spiritual energy there are like many divisions. So it's one, but
Yeah.
for the function of doing different things, apparently he has like internal divisions. Is it like that?
Yeah, I think the example that, I think Srila Prabhupada gave the example, or at least I was told Srila Prabhupada gave the example, is that electricity is one, but depending on what you're plugging in, a refrigerator is going to make something cooler, a stove is going to make something hotter. So it has variegatedness depending on what's tapped into the one energy and what function needs to be performed. Something more?
This is the difference, one of the differences between us and the Mayavads, because they think that the energy of the world is illusion. There is no energy, which is Brahman. Any appearance of any diversity inside Brahman, like energies, pastimes, form, etc., it is Maya.
Could you say something more about these three Vaibhavas, Prabhavas, Anubhavas?
The Kriya Shakti, the Vicha Shakti, or
Vaibhavas objective component. Yes, three Vaibhavas objective component, three Prabhavas influence, and three Anubhavas emotional component.
no, I don't know. I have to see it.
A little bit more
Information.
because for me it's just technical.
Yeah. What is it?
How to say, feel it, how is the words
Can you give me a lot about the time to study that, please?
Going over the same subject matter?
There was something similar there.
Yeah.
Okay, here Prabhavas are called influences, and they are the Icha Shakti, the Jnana Shakti, and the Kriya Shakti. That's what it means. Prabhavas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Icha
No.
Shakti is controlled by Krishna, the power of will, Krishna's desire. Then Jnana Shakti, the power of knowledge. How do you fulfill your desire? By knowledge, controlled by Vasudeva. And Kriya Shakti, creative energy, controlled by Sankarshan, Kriya Shakti. Yeah, he manifests the spiritual world. And regarding the other things, I don't know.
Anubhavas,
Well, the Anubhavas are Sandini, Hladini, and Samvit.
These are the Anubhavas.
Vibhavas. Okay.
And the Vibhavas are Chit, Jiva, Maya.
This is my question, how Krishna used different situations, different, I don't know, no Shastra didn't explain. In Shastra, in Lila, for example,
Yeah.
how Krishna used this Shakti, that Shakti.
Well, the Shakti, so Krishna has the desire. And his Shaktis, they catch this desire and they automatically fulfill the desire of Krishna. And
It's logic difficult to understand how it's.
Well, okay, so the three Vibhavas, right? That's the internal, marginal, and external. So we know how those work. Depending on the marginal's use of free will, he can either work in the realm of the internal or the external, right? And they work differently. The internal works harmoniously. Everything's centered around Krishna. Everything's peaceful. The external, everyone's fighting for control, and so there's chaos. And so the marginal is just, depending on whether we're using our free will properly or improperly, we're going to experience one or the other. So again, the energy is the same, it's coming from Krishna, but depending on what we're trying to accomplish, we're going to have different things. You plug an oven in, you plug a refrigerator in, it's plugged into the same electricity, one's going to cool, one's going to warm. So depending on the Jiva Shaktis, the Jivas within that Shakti, depending on how we are using our free will, we'll either be experiencing one or the other. So that's the first part. Then the Prabhavs, Pandava Mashai already explained Icha, Kriya, and Gyan. And then, we went through the Anubhavas too, Sandini, Samvit, and Hladini. So knowledge, bliss, and eternity. So essentially it's funny because we understand these things, we don't usually use these terms. Just like when Srila Prabhupada is writing his purports, after we know about Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, we can actually see that he's talking about those. Or like on Friday when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur paraphrased a verse, and then Chandrika said what the verse was, so we can, once we know them, we recognize them, right? So the things that we're talking about here means we understand them from what Srila Prabhupada said about the spiritual world and the nature of the jiva and the nature of the material world and the nature of spiritual cognizance, actual, full cognizance, knowledge, bliss, and eternity. So we know these things, how they exist in the spiritual world and then the reflection of it in the material world. But we don't generally use these terms. But if we start getting used to the idea of these terms, then when the terms come up, because they do come up sometimes, then we'll actually be able to know kind of what they're talking about. Otherwise, they just become confusing. Like the first time we read through Bhagavad Gita, so many names, a lot of them are very difficult to pronounce. And, there's Dronacharya and Duryodhana, they both start with D's, they're both on the same side, you kind of get them confused. And then there's a Bhima and a Bhishma, and and Bhishma's actually, he's on the wrong side, but he's actually really good. And then it's like, there's a lot. And so you kind of miss a lot of the philosophy trying to, get it all straight. Wait, who's this? That one? Yeah, there's another D, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Dhanacharya. And so, but once we actually understand it, it's no problem. We can talk about these people and we understand what their personalities are, right? After a while. So in the same way, the more we gradually introduce these terms, we can start seeing them. And so the point is not necessarily knowing the terms. We don't even have to know the terms Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayoja. We do have to know the principle of them, though. And so it's convenient to just say Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. But we can also just say relationship, the process, and the goal. It's fine, as long as we see the principle. So we've encountered all of these 9 in Srila Prabhupada's books, and he does use these terms from time to time, but it's just, not something that has stuck quite yet. So when we read about them all together like this, in like really short sentences, and like they're all there, it can be overwhelming. But yeah, this is basically that paragraph. That's all it's talking about is the 3 subdivisions of the 3 energies, and then they're named. So the internal, the marginal, and the external, the power of will, the creative, and the knowledge, and then the eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Okay. All right. Something more on the energies? And the important thing for us, the principle, is to understand that they're all coming from Krishna, because we have this tendency, and everyone has this tendency, we make a separation between what we think about a thing and then whatever the rest of the world thinks about a thing, just doesn't matter to us, because our experience is the absolute, the absolute. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, yeah, so we have to understand that these energies, they're all coming from Krishna. Otherwise, if we're not, even the external energy, we have to see how it's coming from Krishna. Because if we fail to see that, we're just dealing with material nature according to our own experience, our own intelligence, our own mundane logic, etc. And it's not going to help us, right? So when we actually understand them as Krishna's energy, instead of something that's here to satisfy my needs, something that's here to serve me, we see them actually as Krishna's energies, then we can see the connection, and it can bring us back from interacting with the external energy and actually interacting with the internal energy. So we see it's the same energy, and we just need to know how to deal with it properly. Because if we see these things as separate, completely separate, they are separate categories, but if we see them as completely separate, then we won't try to redirect our consciousness to use the material properly. We're just going to reject the material. All material is bad. That's what the Mayavadis do. Forms are bad, names are bad, all this is bad. But it's not. The form is, there is spiritual form too. So just like there's, the Sat Chidananda, and we have what we're dealing with down here. But it's a transformation of the same energy. So our process is to redirect our consciousness to understand how it's working here, how to properly use it, and then how to get back to there. That's essentially what that section's about. Yeah. Otherwise, as we were talking about last year, we were going over Sri Tattva Sutra, and there was quotes from Sahotra Maharaj's, I think it was Substance and Shadow. He was talking about the deists who they just, they kind of made up their own philosophy because they had no logical explanation of why the material world was full of suffering if God was all-powerful and all good. So they just made up their own philosophy saying that, well, he is all-powerful, but when it comes to the material realm, he's, it's like off limits for him. So if we just leave it up to our own logic and reason and experience, then we fit into this, well, it's the second paragraph, but that there are countless philosophies, but although attempting to reach the truth, they are all incomplete and mutually conflicting, being generated from illusory premises, right? And then all the philosophies find their perfection in Krishna Bhakti. So we may have good intentions, and we may be working off of fairly good information, but until we actually bring it in line with Krishna Bhakti, then we're not going to be successful. Right? Because we're not seeing that all of these things that we're dealing with are actually coming from Krishna. We may know in theory, but if we don't actually know it, like we mentioned the other day how the most often or the most frequent topic of Srila Prabhupada's classes, especially when there were new people, was how we're not the body, right? And sometimes the devotees who have been around a while, we start hearing a class about how you're not the body, and Dehinosmin Yata Dehe is being quoted, and we're like, okay, and I already know this, so I'm just going to go get prasad early, right? And we may know it. We may be able to quote all of the verses. Najayate mriyate vakarache. We can quote so many verses about how we're not the body. We can even explain how, the elements that make up the body, they can't actually animate anything, so the soul has to be there. There's so many things that we can talk about. But if we're still actually identifying with this body instead of with our spiritual nature, which, I hate to break it to us all, but that's what we're doing. When we make our decisions, except for Chandrika, she got mad when I said that. She's like, I'm not doing that. I'm living my life. No, I'm just kidding. So we see that our tendency, when something happens, is to identify with this body, right? We get cut. Oh, I'm cut. But the soul can't be cut, right? But we identify with it. Our base needs usually outweigh our actual needs as far as how much time, energy, and resources we put into the things that we are interacting with every day. Now, the process of bhakti is there to gradually get us from that consciousness to spiritual consciousness by engaging us in specific types of activities that are designed to cultivate that consciousness. But if we're honest with ourselves, we see that even though we're doing these spiritual activities, we're very much still identifying with our material conditioning. We want to rely on Especially this, when we're engaging in Krishna Bhakti, we're doing some service, whatever the service may be, and we see that something's going wrong. And we know that in the past we've done something like this, and so I can do it better. We see that someone's doing something and the result's not happening. But I know how to I know how to get the result. So I jump in and I take over their service, even though it's not our duty. We have a tendency to do this because that's the material conditioning, right? And so these topics come up so often because although we know we're not the body, we don't actually act as if we're not the body. Because as soon as we stop acting like we're the body and start actually identifying with our spiritual nature, there's no need for us to be here anymore, right? We're no longer attached to here. We can be here, we can perform some service, but we're not on that platform yet. Early on, a lot of us think we're on that platform. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm already there, right? I don't know if you've thought that early on when you first became a devotee and you made a lot of progress right off the bat and purified a lot of your old bad habits and just thought, yeah, I'm actually in a pretty good spot here. I think I've reached transcendence. It's called pure devotee syndrome, PDS. And it's a fairly common thing. We see it often. And people have it to different degrees. But yeah, we actually think we're on this platform where, no, I'm just performing my service. Everything I do is devotional service, right? Everything I eat is Krishna Prasad. Every subject I talk about is just Krishna. So, there's no mundane talking. So yeah, I'm on the spiritual platform. I'm basically just, here to finish off my service and go back to Godhead, right? We kind of think like that. But we don't really have that consciousness. We're still, sort of identifying with our conditioned nature. And so we have to gradually let that go. And understanding these energies of Krishna, especially just the principle that they're coming from him alone, is a big step. And then the next step is to properly understand how each of these things should be used, right? And that's our process. And Srila Prabhupada made that very clear in our language, right? So this is the Vedic language, which is also handy. It's good to pick up on parts of it whenever we can. But yeah, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he put in one paragraph something that, it's in just several books worth of stuff. So that's why it seems overwhelming and confusing. But hopefully, in putting those, like Pandavamashai, when he was putting those few things in context, hopefully that made it a little more relatable. But yeah, you'll see just throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, he's talking about these things, just not necessarily in these particular terms. And usually not all together. So often he'll talk about the internal, the marginal, and the external. That's even in Bhagavad Gita. And then where do we first start hearing about Samvit Sandhini Hladini? Bhagavatam, I don't think that's in Gita, is it? Or maybe it is. Yeah, it's there in Bhagavatam, right? But not Gita, maybe? Maybe not in those terms, but yeah, so in other words, they're there. Anicca Kriya Jnana, yeah, that's elsewhere. No. Yes.
Regarding this, I'm not the body, and we being bored by this statement. It means it is not our interest right now. That's why we're bored.
Yeah.
Let's say you're interested in playing drums. I was very interested in this before. So whenever somebody starts talking about this, sharing his experience, if this is your interest,
You get enthusiastic.
You lend your ear, you listen carefully, because you want to learn how to play drums. So even if, the fact that somebody sharing in the class and we're just, that means we have given up the idea of realizing that I'm not the body. Otherwise, we will be happy to understand what this person has to say about it, because this is also our interest. And if he has something, some realization, oh, I'm able to hear, I'm able to learn from him. Maybe he has advanced more than me in this. So it's very sad, and that means often the speaker himself, maybe he's not very interested. The listener, he's not very interested in this topic. And there are a few things like this in Srila Prabhupada's books, like you mentioned, I'm not the body, but there are also a few other phrases. For example, human life is meant for survival. These are very crucial, very prevalent meaning and consequence and implication statements. And if we have little faith in these things, for example, if we believe little bit that human life is meant for tapasya, maybe not 100%, at least 50%, we will have very, very different outlook in our lives. Human life is meant for tapasya. Tapodivyam putra kaya satvam shudyat yasman gram sakam. Now our life will be quite different. The way we perceive things will be very different. Or another thing, another example. Prabhupada makes the point often that the happiness and distress are predetermined. In other words, you better don't
strive for one and try to avoid the other.
Trying to improve your material situation, because you cannot. You will get exactly this amount of happiness and this amount of distress. So better use your energy to advance in Krishna consciousness. That's another very, very crucial moment that we heard maybe once, twice, and then when we hear this, we just, I know that. But
I know that.
If you really know that,
then you'll stop wasting your time.
it will show in your life, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the problem when we read. It's good to read the books.
Yeah.
But if we read Prabhupada's books as material books, in other words, if you read, okay, let's see what we have. You read Krishna Bhagavad, Maharaj was saying that for him, Bhagavad Gita in the beginning was a beautiful book. He really read the book, and I always knew that. I knew that this is like this. But then Krishna book was impossible to read because it's all the same. Here the demon appears, Krishna kills the demon. That's again and again the same thing. So if we read in this way, in a material way, then we'll get the basic concepts very quickly, and then it'll be boring. But it's the same thing again and again. I know the body, you have to serve the Lord, feel the body.
And it all pertains to us, that's the thing. So just like a few weeks ago we were talking about Mayavad, and it was someone's opinion that it's not really a relevant topic anymore for most people. But it absolutely is, because we have the Mayavad tendencies. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is trying to defeat. Not that we travel to Varanasi and challenge the Mayavadis. We challenge the Mayavad tendencies within ourselves, rectify that. Once we do that, sure, if that's your service to go to Varanasi and convert them, we can do that too, but that's not what Srila Prabhupada's intention was. So it's the tendency. And so a personal example is I was given the service when I was first helping with Bhagavatam curriculum. Twice in a row, I had to write curriculum for the second half of the fifth canto. And I didn't want to do it for either school yet because I didn't feel like I was at all qualified. But it made me study it, to actually understand it, to do it. And now, so that whole thing I said yesterday about the Virat Rupa being sweet, that's coming from the fifth canto. Because the fifth canto isn't about the measurements and the proximities and all that. It's about how the Lord is expanding. Everything I said yesterday is from the fifth canto. Was it yesterday? No, today's Monday. Friday means last class. So, and a lot of what I said the first year in Bhagavad Gita class is also from that. Understanding what we're attracted to, because we're spontaneously attracted to something. It's not Krishna. It's external energy. So the fact that we're attracted, it's not a problem, because what we're attracted to is Krishna. But the reason we're attracted to it means because the way it makes me feel, the way that it serves my needs, That's the problem. So we just have to adjust that. The thing is fine, the attraction's fine, but the reason we're, or what we're using that attraction to try to accomplish, that's where the issue is. And that's all resolved in that second half of the fifth canto. So I had to go through it twice, scrutinizingly, to actually be able to come to those conclusions. And it's very important for all of us. Most of us want to skip over it. Honestly, a lot of temples, including Sridham Mayapur, when we're going through Bhagavatam class, after, what's right before it, Rishabhadev, or maybe there's something else there after Rishabhadev before that. Is there something?
The forest of material dream.
No, it's 14.
No, so the beginning of fifth canto, it's
Priyavrata.
yeah, Priyavrata and the family, and Rishabhadev, and
The story of Bharatama.
yeah. So in other words, Bhagavatam class will go up to that, and then Ajamil. Let's go to Ajamil now, because there aren't many people that can speak on it. First of all, and most devotees don't have so much interest. The same thing. Bhagavad Gita classes, a lot of people want to skip over the 11th chapter, the universal form. And the arguments are there, like Chandrika gave the argument but Arjuna didn't even want to see the universal form. He thought it was terrifying. So, and Mother Yashoda, for example, when she looked in Krishna's mouth because Lord Balaram, tattled on him, Krishna ate dirt. He put earth in his mouth, and then she saw that all of the entire earth and the whole cosmic manifestation was there present in his mouth. And she didn't want to see that because then it spoiled the relationship. This is my son. I'm supposed to take care of him. Is he actually the Supreme Lord? And so she said, don't do that again. I think it's pointed out in Krishna book that when she said that, she meant both don't put dirt in your mouth again and don't show me this majestic form because that's not our relationship. So we give these arguments. Arjuna was terrified, he didn't want to see it, he asked him to display his personal form. Mother Yashoda, it ruined the mood.
Also didn't want to see it at all.
Right. So, but the thing is it's for us, it's not spoiling our mood, it's actually helping us get the mood. Our mood's already spoiled, right? For Arjuna, it's spoiling the relationship between the friendship that they had. For Mother Yashoda, it's spoiling that the maternal affection. For us, we don't have that for Krishna. What we have is affection for ourselves. And in order to redirect that affection toward Krishna, we have to see how his potency is making the things that we are attracted to attractive. And it's only his potency that's making it attractive. So if we can see that, and then use these things as they're meant to be used, and instead of just however we feel like using them to satisfy our senses, then that's the process of Krishna consciousness, right? And that all comes from the fifth canto and the 11th chapter. These sections that we tend to skip over, usually those are the sections that we need to hear the most. Usually. So next time we feel bored or sleepy during this part, we should pay extra close attention because chances are it's what's holding us back. See, in the material world, we don't need to experience everything, right? So just walking in the courtyard, different types of people will notice different things. Botanists are going to notice all of the plant life. What are they called? The biologists. They're gonna notice the animals. Geologists are going to notice all the different kinds of rocks. Some people are going to be looking at the sky. Some people are going to be looking at the architecture. How the things were built, the arches that are holding the grass roof up, and how did they get the bamboo up there? Like, did they, because you can't really build that structure on this outer. So different people are going to experience the same thing in so many different ways. And in the material world, we don't have to experience all of the things. Like I don't have to study geology and botany and biology and structural engineering. But the Bhagavatam, everything in there is absolutely important to us, right? So we can learn from all of it. I mean, we can learn from everything in the material world too, but our conditioning is very specific. So we have to purify our conditioning, which is why it's better to engage in your own duties, even if imperfectly, than engage in someone else's even perfectly. Because we don't have to purify their conditioning, we have to purify our conditioning, right? So we just deal with what we got. But when it comes to the Shastra, the Bhagavatam, I should say, because Shastra is vast and it covers so many things, but when it comes to Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Shastras, it's all very important to us. All of the topics will speak to us. All of the pastimes in Bhagavatam, all of the different devotees, even the demons, we can learn very valuable lessons from all of them and the situations. And so we just have to be open to it. We have to figure out what Krishna is trying to tell us by presenting us with these particular books that we're in contact with, or the particular classes. How did we get there?
It was connected with the energies of Krishna.
Thank you.
No, you were explaining how you studying fifth canto and the universal form is
Because you were mentioning these different things that, so first it was not the body, and then you were mentioning that also the human life is meant for tapasya. And so there's so many things that we tend to, I've heard that before, I know it. But yeah, we have to look further into them because we don't know it unless we've actually applied it. There will be signs, as Pandava Mishai pointed out. And as Prahlad Maharaj points out in 5th canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse, that all of the qualities of the demigods become manifest in one, such as knowledge and detachment, etc., become at once manifest in one that's engaged in Krishna Bhakti.
Yes, Bhakti.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite verses. And the thing is that Srila Prabhupada quotes it so often, but he doesn't put the reference all the time. It may be, it's obviously quoted more than it's given credit for, because when we get those shloka books that it says, Srila Prabhupada quoted this however many times, he's actually quoted that one more than he gets credit for because he doesn't always give the, and so many other verses as well. They only count the ones where there's a reference attached to it, because that's how they did it. They did find, and a computer did it.
You don't do it like this.
No, it's not the right way to do it. But it's very difficult to do it the other way, so. Just like, and I shared this with you many times, I have a pet peeve. When people try to do this digital thing to make things easier for people. So often we see that Srila Prabhupada in his purports, he's talking about the Brahma Bhuta state. And sometimes, most of the time, he's referring to Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na Sochiti na Kamshati. And it's clear that he's referring to that because he's breaking down the verse, he's paraphrasing it. But every time the term Brahma Bhuta comes up, they put a bracket with a link to a Bhagavatam verse, which is also talking about the Brahma Bhuta state. Which is good because it's talking about the same thing. But clearly Srila Prabhupada is referring to something else. But somehow they just did a find and then they popped it in there to make it more convenient.
They have more important things to do in life.
Of course. Anyway, it's a pet peeve of mine. It's not that, like I said, it's not the worst thing, because if you go to read that Bhagavatam verse and purport, you're still going to get an idea of what the Brahma Bhuta state is. But clearly he's referring to the Bhagavad Gita verse. It's obvious. So, anyway. But these things we can learn from too, because even when we have good intentions, if we're not paying close attention, and in this case, it's not like anybody's being misdirected or misguided. They're still getting proper direction, but they just don't have as much of an understanding because they're referring to something and not the other. But those who know it, know it. But that's why when we become familiar with Srila Prabhupada's books and we start reading through them again, we just understand, okay, Srila Prabhupada is just paraphrasing verses. That's what he's doing. All of his purports are paraphrasing verses or commentaries from the acharyas from different verses. That's all he does. So that's a lesson for us. That's all we should do as well. He doesn't just start talking willy-nilly about subject matters. Yeah.
Regarding this proper way of reading Prabhupada's books, because sometimes we just want to see what will happen. We just like watching a movie, what will happen in the end.
Yeah.
And therefore the Vedic culture establishes the pratigya. So the beginning of the work, it already tells you what will happen.
Yes.
So it takes away this materialistic interest in what will happen. No, it will happen the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna is God, we are his servants, and we're supposed to say that's what is happening always. And then you pay attention to the knowledge and to the practical application of the knowledge. And even the classical authors like Shakespeare, for example, if you read his drama, then in the beginning there is a chorus, there is an actor who, in one verse, in the beginning, he already tells the public what will happen. So he takes away this, what will happen, and then you know what will happen, and now you can actually enjoy and try to soak in the content of the drama. For example, Romeo and Juliet begins like this. They tell you in the beginning, this will be a tragic love story, and they will die at the end. That's what happens in the very beginning of.
Thanks for spoiling it, Pandavji. I was going to read that later.
No, I didn't spoil it. I gave you So this is the classical, traditional way of doing things.
Mm.
And then now it's not like this. Now it's the interest.
Yeah. A lot of times these days, the stories, so I edit for an author, and he actually doesn't know what's going to happen at the end when he starts writing. He just starts writing. And it's not a good way to...
No, but he will say, no, I just follow the logic of the actors, the characters. They have their own internal...
Sure. Yeah. We have a minute, so we're not going to start rasa. No, but it was an important discussion, though, because otherwise, this is the concentrated version of like a lot of content that Srila Prabhupada has given us. So to just get it in a paragraph is quite overwhelming, especially in terms that we're not really familiar with. But like, for example, now when we talk about Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, we know what they mean, we're familiar with it, we don't have to think, wait, which one was Sambandha, you know. So in the same way, eventually this will also be just as clear. But I hope we shed a little bit of light on it. And today's Monday, so actually tomorrow, not just the next class, tomorrow we'll cover rasa. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.